He looked like Dracula in cleats, lean, toothless, and ferocious, striking fear into the hearts of anyone who crossed the middle. But Jack Lambert wasn't always the NFL's ultimate enforcer. He arrived in Pittsburgh as a skinny rookie too small for linebacker, doubted by every expert in the league. Within months, he was Defensive Rookie of the Year and the face of a steel curtain dynasty, flattening anyone bold enough to test him. What transforms an overlooked draft pick into the most intimidating player the NFL has ever seen? The answer starts with a snarl and a legend that still terrifies the league. To stand across from Jack Lambert was to know fear in its purest form. Opponents still talk about the first time they saw him on a football field. Lean, wiry, pads hanging loose, that infamous gap-toothed snarl twisting beneath his helmet. The nickname came quick: Dracula in cleats. It wasn't just the missing teeth, though that alone was enough to rattle even the toughest veterans. It was the way he carried himself. Eyes fixed, jaw clenched, every muscle coiled as if daring someone to test him. Receivers lined up in the slot and caught a look that seemed to promise pain. Some said he looked half crazed, others just called him the scariest man in football. Lambert didn't need to say a word to get inside a player's head. He'd line up in the middle, arms dangling, fingers twitching, and let the silence do the talking. Teammates swore he could freeze a running back with a glare. Quarterbacks learned to check the middle before every snap, hoping to avoid eye contact. Wideouts started to flinch before the ball even left the quarterback's hand, already bracing for the collision they knew was coming. By the time the play developed, most had already lost a step to nerves. The intimidation wasn't just for show. Lambert made sure every opponent remembered him. He'd drive his shoulder through a ball carrier's chest, then stand over him, face inches away, letting that toothless grin linger. It became a calling card, one that showed up in highlight reels, on magazine covers, and in the nightmares of anyone who played the middle against Pittsburgh. Opposing coaches began game planning not just for the Steelers' defense, but for the psychological warfare Lambert brought to every snap. Even among the bruisers of the 1970s, Lambert's presence was something different. He didn't have the bulk of a traditional linebacker, but he played with a violence that made him seem bigger than anyone else. Former players still talk about the sound of his hits echoing through Three Rivers Stadium, about the way he'd stalk the field between plays, daring someone to challenge him. The message was clear. This was his territory, and anyone who entered would pay the price. Players who survived a game against the Steelers left with bruises, but it was Lambert's face they remembered. That wild, predatory look, part rage, part joy, became a symbol of an era when intimidation mattered as much as talent. No one wore it better than Jack Lambert. In a league full of tough guys, he was the one who made toughness look like an art form. Jack Lambert arrived at Kent State barely tipping the scales at 205 pounds, a string bean in a league of hammers and anvils. The doubts followed him to the 1974 NFL Draft, where he slid out of the first round, 45th overall, a second-round pick for Pittsburgh. Scouts questioned if his frame could survive the punishment of pro football. Even in training camp, coaches wondered if he'd last a season, let alone a decade. But the summer of '74 was no ordinary camp. With veterans striking, rookies like Lambert took every snap, every drill, every hit. He practiced with a fury that made him stand out, even among a draft class that would become legendary. The Steelers already had a proven middle linebacker in Henry Davis, a Pro Bowler who'd started every game for 2 straight seasons. But on August 17th, during a preseason game in Philadelphia, Davis suffered a concussion and an eye injury, one violent collision, and his season was in doubt. Backup Ed Bradley went down a week later with a sprained toe. Suddenly, the job was wide open. Pittsburgh needed someone who could read offenses, call signals, and anchor the heart of their defense. Lambert, barely out of college, was the next man up. He didn't hesitate. From the first snap, Lambert played like he had something to prove. He filled gaps, chased down runners, and barked out assignments with the confidence of a 10-year vet. The pads popped louder when he was on the field. By mid-season, it was clear this wasn't just a stopgap. This was the new face of the steel curtain. Opponents who tried to test the rookie found out quick. He hit like a sledgehammer, and he didn't back down from anyone. His speed let him cover ground sideline to sideline. His anger fueled every tackle. The Steelers' defense, already strong, became suffocating. Lambert's presence in the middle let Pittsburgh unleash creative blitzes and lock down the run. He finished the year with 2 interceptions, 6 fumble recoveries, and countless bone-rattling tackles. The league took notice. Lambert was named NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. More than that, he helped drive the Steelers to their first Super Bowl title in franchise history, a 16-6 win over the Vikings in Super Bowl IX. The skinny kid from Kent State wasn't just holding his own. He was setting a new standard for what a middle linebacker could be. By the end of his rookie season, no one questioned his size. The chip on his shoulder had become the engine of a dynasty. Lambert had turned every doubt into fuel, and in doing so, he became the emotional core of a defense that would define an era. The rest of the league had been warned. Pittsburgh's middle belonged to Jack Lambert now. No one expected the Steelers' defense to get smarter when it got meaner, but that's exactly what happened at the height of Jack Lambert's powers. In the middle of chaos, he played chess while everyone else played checkers. He diagnosed formations before the ball was snapped, shifting the steel curtain like pieces on a board, calling out adjustments in a voice that cut through the noise. Opponents found themselves running into brick walls, then looking up to see number 58 already moving to close the gap. Every play, he seemed to know what was coming. Every audible, he had an answer. But Lambert wasn't just a field general, he was the enforcer. Super Bowl X, fourth quarter, Steelers up by 4. Dallas kicker Roy Gorella misses a field goal, and Cowboys safety Cliff Harris moves in to taunt him. Lambert didn't hesitate. He grabbed Harris and slammed him to the turf, sending a message that echoed through the league. Disrespect a Steeler, and you answer to Lambert. That moment flipped the momentum. Pittsburgh's sideline erupted. The defense stiffened, and the Steelers closed out their second Super Bowl win. Years later, Harris called it the most intimidating moment of his career. The 1976 season showed just how far Lambert's reach extended. After a 1-4 start, he took the defense in hand. 9 straight wins followed, 5 shutouts, and just 28 points allowed down the stretch. A run so dominant it's still the gold standard. Lambert's stat line read like a dare: 8 fumble recoveries, countless tackles, and a presence that made quarterbacks think twice about testing the middle. The league named him Defensive Player of the Year, but his teammates already knew. They called him the heart of the steel curtain, the one you never wanted to let down. On Sundays, he was everywhere, sideline to sideline, teeth bared, eyes locked on the next victim. No one mixed brains and brutality like Jack Lambert. By the early 1980s, the league that once celebrated violence was changing its tune. Rules meant to protect quarterbacks kept piling up, and fines for late hits landed on Lambert's doorstep with increasing regularity. He never hid his contempt. When asked about the new penalties, Lambert fired back with a line that stuck. The NFL should be played by men, not men in skirts. It wasn't just bluster. He saw these changes as an assault on everything football stood for. The grit, the risk, the code that made Sunday afternoons sacred in places like Pittsburgh. But the cost of carrying that banner was steep. By 1984, Lambert's body had absorbed more punishment than most men could imagine. The breaking point came in Kansas City on the second play of the season opener. A dislocated big toe, what doctors called turf toe, left him limping off the field. It sounded minor, but the pain was relentless. Every push-off, every cut sent a jolt through his foot. Trainers built a cast onto his shoe, but the joint wouldn't heal. He tried to tape it, tried to gut through the games, but the old range was gone. He started only 3 times that year, each snap a reminder of what he'd lost. There was no miracle comeback. Modern medicine might have bought him a few more seasons, but in 1984, the options were limited. Lambert was forced onto injured reserve in December. He retired before the next season, 11 years after his rookie debut. 6 years later, the Hall of Fame called. But the image that endures isn't a gold jacket. It's that battered, toothless snarl, the outlaw who played by his own rules while the league moved on. He became the last great symbol of an era when football was raw, violent, and uncompromising, and when the price for that kind of greatness was paid in full. In 11 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jack Lambert started 146 games, won 4 Super Bowls, and was named to 9 Pro Bowls. His toothless snarl became a symbol of the NFL's most feared defense, and his 1976 Defensive Player of the Year award confirmed his dominance. Official records show he played much of his career at just 220 pounds, defying expectations about size and strength. Despite the documented impact of his turf toe injury, which forced his retirement in 1984, questions remain about how long he might have played with today's medical advances. Lambert's legacy is still visible in NFL films, Hall of Fame displays, and league debates over physicality, facts that underscore how his example shaped the linebacker position. While some details of his private life after football are limited by his own reclusiveness, the evidence is clear. Jack Lambert set a standard for intimidation and toughness that continues to define the history of the game.